Okay. Okay. Well, I guess we're on. Yeah. Anyway, good evening. So welcome to Sunday Night Live, and ah, sawadee kap, and namaste, aloha, and welcome to everybody. So tonight, um, I'm just going to start with a couple of, I don't know, uh, a couple of generalities regarding this whole problem of CFCs. All right. Hi, Chicago, Florida. All right. Everyone's joining. Yeah. New York. I love it. Okay, cool. Everybody's climbing on. That's great. So, anyway, tonight, as usual, I think I usually give a couple of comments that I think are relevant to not only CFCs, but life. But with regards to CFCs, the important thing to please remember is that the only difference between any of them is location. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, let me say to you all what I have to say, and that is, again, and I've said this before. Yeah, there we go. And I said this before, and that is, if you have currently have CFCs and it's a big problem. I mean, it's it's always a big problem, but please remember that an Oasis of Healing, the center that we started in I don't know 2005 or whatever, it's still there, and I'm here. So um, it's really hard to get a hold of me when I'm in the other countries. So, but that's always there. So if you and that's what I would like to see you. I'd like to see you go there anyway because it's we've been around, we know what we're doing, and we have wonderful results. So it's just it's the place to go, right? So if you can't get in touch with me because of doing individual consults online is very difficult to fit into my schedule, so that I'm not as available as I was. So our team is working on something so that to change all that, so it'll make it much more available to everyone. So anyway, and Vancouver, yay. Okay. Um, yeah. So a question there is, how often am I in Arizona? That has been, well, originally when I moved out of the country in 2012, I used to come back 3 to 4 times a year because um, it was a transition period, and then of course the great hoax of 2020 came along, and yeah, no one could travel, right? So there was a while there. I think it was 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. I couldn't come here to Arizona, but since the borders opened and all that, so I've been coming here again, like at least 2, 3 times a year. So now that the center is going to be opening in Thailand, I'm going to have to do my best to split it. But just to know that anywhere, but even especially Oasis in Arizona, is that even if I'm not there in person, I'm there virtually. So I'm on. I have a Zoom call with the doctors and everyone else there at least once a week, and then of course I can. We can have our Zoom conversations about the treatment that's happening in the program and all that. So even if I'm not physically present, I'm still there. So anyway, that's very important to know because I'm afraid that a lot of people wait for me to show up there or open up in Thailand and all that. And there's no need. Just go, give us a call at an Oasis of Healing, an Oasis of Healing, right? If you don't put the word "an" in, what happens is sometimes you get redirected to other centers that have the word Oasis. Um, and I shouldn't have used "an" because it was too. As you know, I'm too much. I'm too much. I, I'm obsessed with linguistics and of course grammar, and you got to say "an." So anyway, I threw that in. I should have just said Oasis of Healing. It would have been a lot better, but because often people don't put the "an" and they wind up somewhere else. So therefore, we made it real easy because you could always just type into the URL stopmakingcancer.com and it'll redirect you to our website there, and then you can get in touch with the patient care coordinators who will talk to you and get an appointment for a Zoom conference right, quickly, and we can get things moving. Okay, so that's that. Now, just as a reminder too, Dr. Thomas Lodi MD at Dr. Thomas Lodi MD will allow you to join in on these lives with Twitter. All the rest, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, are at Dr. Thomas Lodi, no MD. All right, and as you know, all of these channels will record them and replay them. Hey, South Dakota, wow, right on. New Zealand, wow. So yeah. Anyway, um, at Dr. Thomas Lodi, and only Twitter or X is at Dr. Thomas Lodi MD. Okay. So the other thing you can go on to YouTube, as I said, and also go to my website Dr. Thomas Lodi, and just go. I think you put um, live. You know, people say /. I've never seen a backward slash, so I don't. Can't we just say slash instead of /? Anyway, um, yes. Can you work out? You can see yes. So but you'd have to know when I'm going to be there. But the problem, someone's asking, can they make sure that I'm there? But physically, remember, I'm there anyway. But sure, but we don't even really know the schedule completely, until it happens. But just to assume I'm going to try to split my time between both places. But I'm at both places virtually anyway. So let's go on. So you can, as I say, you can live stream this on the website drthomaslodi.com. So that's that. Now, what I wanted to say to everyone is something that I was very, I guess it's very important. We're talking about prayer. I was talking with one of my students, wonderful person, and by the way, you're not patients, you're students. So if any doctor is calling you a patient and not a student, then they don't understand the origin of the word doctor, which comes from Latin, meaning to teach. And in Japan, doctors are known as sensei, which is the teacher. So therefore, you should be students. And who's not a student? We're all students. We're all in this amazing drama of life, and we're all students, and none of us have figured it out. It's incomprehensible. So we're all students, but particularly in this situation, if you have CFCs and you work with me as students. So I was talking with this wonderful person, and we talked about prayer, and I wanted to discuss prayer for a moment. First of all, we have to understand that God does not usurp natural law. So when we say the word miracle, oh, by the way, if you don't know God, call it nature. If that, if you can't, because remember, God is not a guy with a beard in the sky. It's nothing like that at all. But that's, and we always refer to it to God as He, but I'm sure he's not. He's probably not probably, but he's definitely without gender. Can't say any more, otherwise, they'll knock me off. That's the bad word, gender. So anyway, so I was just, the essence of the spirit that underlies all things, which include and in the fabric of it is intelligence and life and existence. So anyway, so but God will not usurp natural laws. Why? Because natural laws are the laws established by God. And these are the laws of nature. And this is really what Jesus meant when he was talking to Satan up on the cliff or the mountain, and Satan told him to jump, and he said, no, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Meaning, well, that was his way of saying it, but meaning that the laws of nature will not be usurped. So, therefore, oh, and by the way, well, but aren't there miracles? Yeah, it's called existence. That's a miracle, that everything exists. That is a miracle. And if you're a little child and you look at a flower, you're like, wow. You look at a lizard, it's like, everything is a miracle. And as I think Einstein said, that you can look at everything as what? As a miracle or as ordinary. Yeah. But anyway, it's all miraculous. And you realize that if you just can clear your mind for a moment and just, which is hard for us adults to do, but you clear your mind and look at anything in the natural world and you'll be blown away. The fact that it exists, anyway, it's hard to explain that to someone, so you have to really experience it. So if you've ever had one of those moments of awe looking at a sunset or standing at the Grand Canyon or looking at a tornado, any of those things that put you in awe, that's close to that, what we're talking about, realizing that the very fact of existence is a miracle. And so it's within that miracle that God works. So when you're praying, you can't please don't expect that some intervention will come in and bypass nature. Okay? So let me make a little more sense. During prayer, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're praying out of fear, that fear is dominating. And that fear, as we know, fear and anger and regret and all the negative emotions that we have directly suppress the immune system, directly and immediately suppress the immune system. Now, as soon as you stop thinking, then because we can't control our thoughts, you can't. No one decides what they think. Okay, so since we're not the originators of our thoughts, and I know a lot of people think they are, and by the way, I know everyone wants to hear, thank you. Everyone wants to hear answers to the questions, but please take a moment and just listen, because this applies to everyone. Okay. There were some studies done, and it's showing that prayer works. And in fact, I think what I found to be the most interesting were the studies that showed people, they just chose people who didn't know the person in the hospital. And the person in the hospital didn't know that anyone was praying for them. And they were praying versus another person. And there was the person got better. It works. So why did it work? Because there's two ways of praying. If you're praying out of fear, you're dominated by fear. But if you're praying because you know God can do it, that releases your foot off the brakes of the immune system. And so what I want to say is that God works through nature because that is the miracle. Nature is a miracle. It is a miracle. So that's the difference, and it's a very important difference. I know if you're really anxious about hearing the answer to questions, you might not really be hearing this. Um, so so what I suggested to this person, and I would suggest to all of us, whether or not we have CFCs that we know about or not, is to learn to control the mind. Okay, and why do we want to control it? Because the only place we ever suffer is in our minds. And you might say, well, no, 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 no. If I got my, if a snake bit my arm, that's not in my mind, but it is actually, because if you had, if you had the misfortune of being a quadriplegic, you wouldn't feel it. And why wouldn't you feel it? Because the electrical message would not have gone up to your brain, and, right? So all of our senses, whether we're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and all that stuff, ultimately these are just different apparatus that are stimulated by the world, and they depress a certain part called the receptor, and it sends an electrical signal to parts of the brain. And as you know, the brain and mind are impossible to separate. um, so it's an electrical. Ultimately, all sensation is an electrical impulse in the brain, and then it goes all over and it connects with all your history and all the connections you know. And anyway, you come up with what's called a perception. So sensation and perception are different. Okay, so in reality, that really implies that none of us know or have ever been in touch with that which is outside of us. Even you're touching something, it has to depress the Pacinian corpuscles that for pressure that again go in and produce an electrical charge. So we're not in touch with the world. And as crazy as that sounds, it's true. This is just fact. It's not an opinion. It's fact. If you study sensation and perception, which is an important part if you're studying psychology, it's one of the core courses that you need to study, the difference between sensation and perception. And so, therefore, most of us function at the whim of our stimulus input. We react to it. But what we're reacting to actually is our perception of it. And remember, about yesterday and the day before and a year before, all that exists about that is your current fragmented, partial memory of your perception at that time. So the thing is that we don't. It's just an idea, and the future is an idea. An idea is a thought, and then you have all the other stuff: should be, could be, should have been, could have been, maybe, and if. Okay, so none of them are, neither the future, past, and all this. None of them are. So they are, but thoughts and pictures, images are is how our mind works. Mostly images. You mostly think of things in images. Occasionally you use words, but more often images. And an image of something, a picture of something, and the word of, like a chair, the picture of a chair or the word chair, neither of them are a chair. They're symbols of. Therefore, they're not real. A symbol is symbolic of that which is real. So the mind, which uses thought, which is either pictures or words, is using symbols. So it's symbolic reality. All right. So now, since future and all the shoulds to the past aren't, so what is? Well, what is now. The thing about now is you cannot think about it, because the moment you're thinking about it, what you're thinking about is a moment that just passed. So the only way to get into approach now, by the way, now never began and will never end. It's called eternal because it has never not been now, and it will never not be now. I'm waiting for many, many years for tomorrow. Every time I wake up, it's now. So, um, and guess what? So now you can't think about it, but you can only experience it. Therefore, and who lives? What is in the now, the eternal now? That's where the home of God. So if you want to go to the temple is in, inside you of now. Now, but the price of admission is your mind. So we need ways to get there, and ways to get there. There's been different disciplines around the world, and they use different techniques. They call it meditation, and nowadays in the world of science, we call it psychoneuroimmunology. Psychology, neuro, the brain, immunology. So the effect of the thinking on the brain, on the immune system. And remember, it's the immune system that ultimately determines whether or not we survive or not with anything. Pneumonia, anything, doesn't matter. It's the immune system. And the problem is, it's the immune system, again, as I've said before, is the shadow of the mind. So wherever the mind goes, the immune system goes. So really fantastic news, and it's way up there. And really bad news, and it's way down there. And since we don't know what we're thinking, I mean, we don't know what we don't originate our thoughts. I know you think you do, but tell me where your thoughts come from. Did you decide to think them? Did you have a thought to say, I'm going to think this? No. You have to understand that makes no sense. So thoughts arise from, we can't say, from God, of course, where all things arise from. But so we're not the originators, and so we don't know if it's going to go up or down. But we do know this: 90% of our thinking is subconscious, meaning it's not available to us. We don't know what 90% of our internal dialogue is. We only know that 10%, tip of the iceberg, that we're thinking of. So even if I'm thinking of a beautiful picture, a beautiful scene, 90% is unknown, but we also know that 80% of human thought is negative. So the problem is, as long as you're thinking, whether it's a beautiful thought, 80% under there is. So therefore, our only option is to turn it off. And the way you turn it off is you focus on one thing 100%. And so what I propose, and I think it's the easiest, and it's also the most accessible, is your breath. So if you pray, which is you're talking to God, first of all, it's probably God, unless you know that you're going to heal as soon as you connect, that's different. But if there's any doubt in there, it's suppressive. Therefore, if you pray, whether it's morning and night, or whether it's 5 times a day if you're a Muslim, or whatever it is, after that, take 2 minutes and listen for the answer. And where does God live in us? It's our breath. And I think we've discussed this before, but it's the holy breath of God that animates the flesh. And when this breath leaves, the flesh turns back to earth. Okay? And if you remember from the first book in the Pentateuch by Moses, also called Genesis, in the 2nd chapter, God took up some earth. The Hebrew name for earth is Adam, and breathed into the nostrils, and there was life. Okay, so by listening to your breath with your heart and soul and everything, with your eyes closed, once you get there to where you're 100% there, you go through a doorway and you enter the kingdom of God. You enter the eternal now. But you've got to get the mind down to that, and then you go through. It's not easy. It takes you've got to be persistent. You have to do it just like if you want to work out with your muscles. You want to work out, you can't just do it once in a while. Or, so, but the mind's a little more difficult to control than anything else. So, and to control your mind is to still it, to make it so it's not working. As soon as it's not working, you're right there. So the price of admission to the kingdom of now is your mind. Okay. Psychoneuroimmunology, or meditation, or listening to God, or quieting your mind. There's many different ways you can refer to it. So the reason that's important, because as soon as your mind is, and there's many studies proving this, with catheters in the arm, taking a continuous blood test, looking at natural killer cells, looking at T cells, activated T cells, looking at all the cells in the immune system. They go through the roof as soon as your mind turns off. And as long as you're thinking, remember, anything, you've got your foot on the brakes of the immune system. So when prayer is with knowing that I pray, that's a whole different thing. That's the same as faith. And faith is when you know what's going to happen before it happens. The lady that ran up the stairs, she knew if she touched Jesus' robe that she would be healed, and he turned to her and said, "It was your faith, not me." So you understand what faith is. Faith is knowing. And as soon as what's going to happen before it happens, as soon as you know, that also takes your foot off the brakes of the immune system. Had you but faith, you could move mountains. But you wouldn't. You know why? They're where they're supposed to be. Everything's where it's supposed to be. Even though that's not what we always like to understand or believe, but everything exists because it needs to. Remember, the law of the universe is the law of necessity. Okay, it's not a moral law. It's not a moral. Laws of the universe are not moral. Because the truth is, there is no good and bad. Everything that exists because it's necessary. Right? Because you might ask yourself, why would God create Satan? He didn't know that, or God didn't know that Satan would be a fallen angel. Of course. So for the same reason that you cannot define up without the understanding of down, and you can't have a front without a back. Well, goodness, what we call goodness, would not be understood without evil. It's just the way it is. And I know you may not want to understand that or hear it, but it's just the way it is. So anyway, there was a book there's a book in it's called in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, called Ecclesiastes, written by King Solomon. And he said the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And it's not the fear, but it's the understanding that this is God's show. Producer, director, set director, casting director casted you for this role. No one else could play it. And writer of the scripts. So basically, that means you understand that, wow, I can't change it. I can't do anything. But we all are under the illusion that we can. And you know that old expression, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and life is what happens to you while you're busy making plans, right? So we all know that. I can give a million examples. I think you all understand what I mean. So, for me, I went off to India at the age of 19. And the last thing in the world I would ever want to do is be a doctor. And I wind up in New York doing a residency in internal medicine. What? So that's all, there's that, and everything else that's happened in my life reminds me that I didn't. It's not my. I'm not doing this. It's happening. Life's a happening, and we are human beings, not human doings. So I know that expression. Let's do lunch. Oh, that always like I don't know. It's one of those things that hurts my ears when I hear it. Anyway, Atman. Yeah, someone said Atman up. Or Amen. Amen. Yeah, Amen. Um, but Atman is another concept. So anyway, I just wanted to say that um, if you have a prayer, if you pray, after you pray, take 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, and listen to your breathing with your eyes closed in a quiet place. If you don't pray, and even if you do, pick another 5 times during the day where you're going to stop what you're doing and for 2 minutes, listen. You've got to be consistent so you get good at it. Because the first time you try it, you won't last more than 3 seconds. And then you're gone. Then you got to remember, come back now. But remember, it's only a 2-minute commitment. You can do it. You can do it. So we've got to exercise that muscle of the mind to shut it off and enter into reality now, eternal now, where God lives. Yeah. As soon as we get there, the immune system goes through the roof. Through the roof. And I'm not, I wish I could share the screen, because anybody that's ever had a consult with me knows that I like to use Zoom so that I can share the screen so I can show you the research, because I don't want you to ever believe another doctor the rest of your life, including me. If whatever they say, just say, thank you very much for your opinion. Could you please share with me the research you've read that helped you come to that opinion? So that's what I like to do. And if I could share this, I would show you, and you can look it up yourself on both about what they refer to as meditation, we refer to as psychoneuroimmunology, and we also refer to as listening to our breath. So you would see that what I'm saying is documented by blood tests, okay, looking at the immune system. And I've all told you that there's been several hundreds of examples that I've witnessed over the last 38, 39 years doing this, of the power of, faith in these cases. And faith is when you know. As soon as you know what's going to happen, and see, we have within us the ability to know. And so the job really of me, my job, is really to allow you to know that, and allow you to open that up, allow you to remove your barriers to that, because that's the barrier. The barrier is our mind, is our fear, is our anxiety. All that stuff is the barrier to allowing that divine force to come through. Okay, so my job would be to teach and inspire, because I can't heal anything. No one can. Only God. Or, for those of you that don't know about God, nature. Right? You get a cut, big slash on your arm, you go to the hospital, the doctor sews it up, really does a fantastic, incredible job. Should take pictures of it. Perfect. Are you going to heal? Depends on your body, right? If you've got proper nourishment. If you're a malnourished person, you're probably not going to heal that well. So healing does not come from anything external. Healing comes from within. Okay? So really, that's where our work is. Our work is within. We get confused by our sensory input and our perceptions of our sensory input. And we forgot. It started with Cain. We forgot that everything we need exists. So Cain said, no, I got to make a plow. And God wasn't real happy with that. So anyway, I wanted to mention that because listen, you have to understand that I've been doing this a long time, and I've watched many people go through this process. And the most, I don't know how to, in orders of importance, it's not the most important, it's the only thing that matters. Up here, our soul, our mind. Okay, and it may be hard for people to understand because we're not. It's not like bringing your car to the mechanic, dropping it off, and say, "I'll be back later." Which actually, you realize the implicit relationship most people have with their doctors. They basically go in and say, "Hey, doc, here's my disease. Fix it. I'll be back later." And then he agrees. She agrees, and that agreement is the root of all disputes between doctors and their students, because that's not possible. Can't fix anything that isn't broken, and you're not broken. There's nothing broken. The body is doing what? That which is necessary. Well, why would it do this? Because it has been exposed to lots of, all sorts of toxins and stress and all that stuff that conspire to eliminate the mitochondria or to knock them down. And once you do that, the cell has got to survive, so it starts to ferment. And that's just it. And that's why we don't call it by the zodiac sign between Gemini and Leo called Cancer. We don't call it that. So if you don't know anything about astrology, find out what your sign is, your sun sign. So if you're Taurus and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, how's your Cancer?" You say, "I'm Taurus." What are you talking about? Um, so you're not that, okay? So what's going on is you got some chronically fermenting cells that are doing that because they need to. They have to. It's a necessity. In fact, we all have these CFCs in us because that's a part. It's a natural adaptive process. That's just what it is. So we have to appreciate that. Okay. So I know that that's not what people came to hear about here, but I really want you to understand that is what you need to hear. We all need to hear it. And when I talk you, I mean me, I mean all of us. We're all the same. All right. So we're all the same. No, we're not different. No, no, no. Brad Pitt and whoever, Angelina Jolie, they're not different. Because after they die, if someone were to do an autopsy, they would find that inside they're exactly the same as everybody else. Clark Gable, who I don't, whoever, even what's his name, Kissinger. Anyway, well, I don't know. He might not be from this particular biological uh, world. Anyway, but we're all the same. Arteries, nerves, everything goes in the same places. Okay, so physically we're the same. And then how about emotionally? Same, same. We need we need to be loved. We need to love. We need to be touched. We need to touch. We need to be happy. We need to make people happy. We all have the same needs, and and we're only satisfied by the same things. So as much as we would like to be different, and we which is just an insane celebrity thing, um, we're not. What is it? You could take, and if you look at the DNA, I think you could take what do they call them? Like, let's say you took an extremely tall Dutch person. You know, I had a friend in medical school who was average. He was 6.7, 6 foot 7, 6'7". But let's say you took a giant and you took a dwarf, pygmy. They're almost indistinguishable genetically. There's a few little differences. How about us and chimps? 99% same DNA. So, and by the way, this is not an opinion. It's just a fact. Anyway, so I wanted to say that, and it's really important, and I hope you heard it, and I hope you weren't too distracted by what you want to get an answer to, because the answer is to everything is that. The answer is enter the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of eternity. So let's start answering some questions. Um, oh, by the way, last week I wasn't sure if I was trying to remember if I talked a little bit about when you're being you're working with a doctor and they always look at tumor markers, right? And tumor markers are not biologically tumor markers. That's not what they are. What they are is different little antigens that are on cells that have other purposes that seem to be sometimes associated with a particular location of the CFCs, but not always. For example, the two main markers for breast CFCs is CA27.29 or CA15-3, and then but we also CEA, which is supposed to be colon, well, but it's also in lung, it's also in pancreas. So in other words, but anyway, but the ones I mentioned for the breast, I've had students with extremely large tumors of their breast with normal tumor markers. So they're not really tumor markers. And if they're growing up, what do we know? Nothing. We don't know if it's growing or it's uh, dying so quickly that it's spilling more of those antigens into the blood. We don't know. So we need to look at other things. And so what are the other things we look at? And if your doctor is not doing that, then tell them you'd like them to do that. And that is you want to look at your ferritin to iron ratio, because that's 5 or above means CFCs. And LDH, which is an enzyme, which is the last enzyme in the step in the process of fermentation, also known as glycolysis. So if it's going up, that's supporting evidence of that. It also has LDH is also necessary and can be found in many organs. So not completely, but then the other thing. Yes. Jen, maybe. LDH, and then there's another one. It's called the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio. So neutrophils are one kind of white blood cell, and lymphocytes are another kind. And the neutrophils are usually the ones that are on the scene when there's first a problem first occurs, right? Them and some of the other ones that are called phagocytes eat, but they show up there. But anyway, and that means acute process going on, and we look at the percentages of them. So remember, there's only 100% in anything. So the more percentage, the higher the neutrophils go. Then, of course, in terms of percentages, the lymphocytes go down. So instead of looking at the percentages, which is what you see, you got to get the absolute values. So if the absolutes are, you've got neutrophils much higher. If the ratio is high, and I think it comes to around 7. If it's 7 or above, it means, and especially if it stays there. It could easily be that if you had bacteria in your blood, you were septic, or other things like that. But if that's not the case, then looking at the neutrophil lymphocyte ratio is another marker. But I wanted to mention that to you because I've noticed when I've gone around to other practices that they don't do that. And then the other thing that is very, very important is to look at you remember, okay, so maybe we talk about the neutrophils. The neutrophils gobble things up, but the lymphocytes are the ones that are going to really eliminate the CFCs, along with their helpers like macrophages, dendritic cells, and the natural killer cells. But anyway, you got to have lymphocytes. So if the neutrophils are really, really high and you've got less lymphocytes, then you're going to have a problem. Okay, so it's a very important thing to look at. So we do what's called a lymphocyte subset, and I think the best place is with not what do they call them? Quest and the other one, LabCorp, which are the main ones here. but rather, I think it's called Cyrix. Anyway, they do this what's called a lymphocyte map, and they give like, I was it 31 or 30, I don't know, something, a lot of different, uh, a lot more information than you get from a lymphocyte subset from Quest or LabCorp. They just give you a basic outline, but this other one shows you ratios, and by the way, so the T4s, the T4 cells can become helper cells, Th1, Th2. They can also become T17, and they can also become Tregs. Which anyway, but you don't know that with a standard lymphocyte subset, and you need to know that. And so that's another way of assessing whether or not how you're doing. So all of that needs to be taken into account. And the other one, the one that I probably that is overlooked so much, is how you feel and how your state of mind is. That is not at the bottom or adjunctive or something. That's really everything. That's everything. How do you feel? How have you laughed recently? Have you enjoyed eating? Or do you have, are you enjoying life? Are you sleeping well? Are you able to have good bowel movements? How do you feel? Because that is an indication more than anything of what's going on. Because something to keep in mind is that none of us have a contract with God, the universe, for tomorrow. We're here today by the grace of God. We'll be here tomorrow by the grace of God. Period. Period. So if one of the witches or warlocks in the House of Horrors tells you, well, if you don't do what I say, you're going to be dead in 3 months, and if you don't do what I say, you're going to be dead in 2 years, and they don't know. Think about it. If you don't do what that person says, in other words, you leave, how does he know what happens to you? He doesn't. She doesn't. So for me to say what will happen to you if I don't see you again is a 100% lie. Unless, of course, you're wearing a white coat. Then it's called a medical opinion, right? Right. So, anyway, but we grew up in a world where now the Rockefeller scheme, which began early 1900s, was well established by 1910 with the Flexner Report, and then it went worldwide, and all the countries are now playing the same allopathic dance of the disease model, right? The diseases, there's hundreds of thousands of them, they're out there, and they're going to get us. And each one requires a different poison, because you're going to poison that thing to get rid of it. This is just not the way it is. That's not the way it is. Everything that's called a disease is the body adapting to a situation where it's biological, psychological, and spiritual needs are not being met. And yes, you cannot separate the psychology and the spirituality from the body. It's a complex. It's a complex. Because as you all know, being born in the 21st century or 20th century or 21st century, after Einstein, we all know that E equals mc squared, meaning that energy equals matter times the speed of light squared. But if you understand that your body's made up of molecules, and molecules are made up of atoms, and atoms are protons and neutrons with electrons flying around them. And if you open up the center of any atom, what do you have? You have Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So that means that the very center of everything that's matter is energy. So it's been said that matter is slowed down light. Anyway, you can't separate any of this. And we know the power of thought. We know the power of thought. We know that from many instances. So please don't underestimate it. And when you say something negative about someone to them and they hear it, they're 70% water. Water is what? What is water? I'm going to give a webinar on water. It blows my mind. If you understand what water is, it'll blow your mind. But just suffice it to say today that water is memory. It holds memory. And Emoto, you all know Emoto from Japan. He would have put a word on it, and it doesn't matter what language it is. You put in any language the word love or peace or health, whatever their word is, will have the same effect on and the water, with frozen immediately, will have the same beautiful crystal structure, because it's the intent. And is intent a thing? What is intent? Well, that's what I was talking about with prayer. Remember before, it's the intent of the prayer. If you're out of fear, that's what you're going to get. But it's out of knowing, that's what you're going to get. So when you say a bad thing, that's something like you're stupid, you're ugly, you're worthless, you're whatever we would say, you've just cursed them and all the crystals in their body, only if they believe you. So I used to tell my kids when they come home and they were like angry or crying or something about this so-and-so called me a name. And so I'd always ask them, well, what if they called you a banana? Would you be upset? No. All right. So it's because of your relationship to that word. Whatever they called you, you have this thing about. So it's not what they said, it's your perception of it. So anyway, enough of that. Let's go into questions. Now, the first one I want to answer here, came to our website, and it's a random question. It's Anouk. And she said, I have thousands, or he, I'm not sure. I have thousands of questions for this interesting man, but the most important question is Dr. Lodi single? Wow. Yeah, I was born this single. We're all single. but I'm not married, no. Anyway. But yeah, right, when we come into this world naked and alone, and we leave it alone. We leave this life alone too. So anyway. Now, here's a question from Charles, and he says, diagnosed with pancreatic CFCs, tumor is growing rapidly. They found a metastasis on my liver. The plan is 6 rounds of chemo. Not sure what to do. The pain is excruciating from the tumor. So, yeah, I understand that. So the question is, not sure what to do. Okay. Well, in pancreatic CFCs, if you know the location of the pancreas in the body, it's sitting there, and it's got like it's right in the mid-abdomen, and it's got the head of it connects to the small intestines through a little duct where the pancreas produces and secretes enzymes, and those enzymes come out to help us digest, that are required for digestion. But it's right near this in the small intestines. It's in the duodenum. It's right near the duct that comes from the gallbladder. It's right near there. Okay, so if you have CFCs going there, that's usually not as painful. But the way you know about it, because it's right there, it can block the bile duct, so you get yellow and you jaundiced. Your eyes are like, when you see someone who's really jaundiced, their eyes are almost orange, and the skin is yellow, the urine is very dark, and the stool becomes pale because it's all. So that's the head. So if you're having excruciating pain, that probably means it's either in the body or tail of the pancreas. All right. So the tail goes over to the spleen, and it's also connected right next to the stomach. So you've got stomach, spleen. And then remember, the head is over here at the duodenum. So it's right in the middle. So usually the pain is either you feel it here, here, and or in your back. And that's because the growth of the tumor will be compressing the nerves back there. Um, right. So, you know, what to do? Well, with pain, and especially because when you have excruciating pain, you can't think about anything else. You can't meditate. You can't pray. Excruciating pain is what it sounds like, and that's about the only thing that's on your mind. It's like it takes over your entire experience. So it's horrible. So now, unfortunately, most medical doctors will give opiates in a case like that. And opiates are like morphine, oxycodone, and hydroxycodone, and all those, and fentanyl. There's many of them, and the difference between them is just they might have something added onto it, but it's really length, how long they're going to last. So if you can get a fentanyl patch, which will last 72 hours. You can just put it on, and it's giving you a little bit of time. Now, here's the problem with the opiates. They do actually the opposite of what you need to happen. First of all, if you have an opiate, it's going to lower your threshold of pain, which means what wasn't painful yesterday will be painful today. So your threshold of feeling it is lowered, which is not what I was looking for, you were looking for, anybody's looking for. Number two, it paralyzes your gut, and you know that because you become constipated. But it's not only is it constipating you, it's paralyzing the upper part of your gut, so you're not really digesting and assimilating your food very well. That's not okay. And then it directly suppresses natural killer cell function. So how does it work? What does it do? Well, basically, it gets you so like high. I wouldn't call it a high, but it's more like a drunk, but due to an opiate drunk, so that you don't even care about it. You're paying less attention to it. I don't know. Okay, so I'm sorry, TikTok, they just told me that my themes of my discussions are age restricted. I was talking about a pancreas and pain. I don't understand. I see so many things on TikTok that are like, what? And what did I say that's age restricted? At what age? Is it 18? Is it 21? Is it 8? What is the age restricted? And what themes am I saying that are age restricted? I don't know. Anybody, did any of you hear anything I said that was that would be unsuitable for somebody? It's probably the medications. Well, anyway, can you imagine? Well, but if a little kid goes to the doctor and has what do you call it? A real bad cough and can't stop coughing, they might give him a little bit of cough syrup with codeine in it, which was an opiate. So I don't know. Anyway, what I'm saying is that it really doesn't work. Now, probably one of the most common causes of pain is something is obstructing or pressing on something else, or something is inflamed. And that's why non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which are like ibuprofen and um, naproxen and Toradol, and they're anti-inflammatories. And if you could turn off the inflammatory part of something, so if you were taking opiates, you should also take anti-inflammatories to reduce as much inflammation as you can, and then you'll need less of the opiate. But all of that can be substituted and eliminated with the use of cannabis. So, but it needs to be high doses, and it needs to be a 4-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD. And of course, you need to have like 500 milligrams each one. So taking 500 milligrams twice a day of that stuff would be, even if you like the feeling of cannabis. You wouldn't. It's just too much. Cheech and Chong wouldn't want it. So, um, but here's a very interesting fact, and that is that I've mentioned this before. I know it's not new to you, and you're probably saying, "Oh no, this again." But I just, it's important to, if you hear if you hear the same thing in different contexts, it becomes more. You understand it better. Um, but what was that? Oh, so anyway, um, when you use a suppository, a rectal suppository, it's usually pushed up to the upper part of the rectum. And I just had to verify by using, they made, just now they had a piece of a puzzle and I had to move it over to there. Wow, they're after me. TikTok's after me. Everybody remember, if all this goes down, because I guess I'm saying stuff that I shouldn't say, um, always go to Rumble. Okay, always go to Rumble because that will be at this point in our time is the least or not supposedly uncensored. Because I'm not sure what I'm saying wrong or against the main story of that they want to be um, believed. And I use the word story because I don't like to use the word narrative. And why don't I like to use the word narrative? I used to until it became everybody saying the narrative, the narrative. I don't like when words become a fad and they lose their meaning. Well, the whatever the narrative. So it's like the word awesome used to be a good, great, fantastic word, and you used it extremely rarely. Extremely rarely. If anybody remembers what life was like 20 years ago, now everything's awesome, awesome. You go shopping, and I can't believe how often it's used. It's ridiculous. It's become, I don't know. It's just lost its meaning. Awesome. You know the word awe? Awe. You're in awe over something. It means you're speechless. It's like, wow. That's what it used to mean. So now we need a new word for that. If buying a shirt and you ordered the shirt, is that all you want? Awesome. If that's awesome, then we've got to come up with a new word for awesome. What awesome is. But anyway, same thing with okay. Now, so as it turns out, the if you look at the drainage system of the rectum, the lower two-thirds or the two-thirds that are the go to the outer, right? So the upper one-third closer to the colon there uh, drains into the veins that go into the portal circulation, which is where all of the veins, remember, veins drain, arteries deliver, okay? All the veins of the gastrointestinal system um, go up into one main vein that enters the liver. Why? Because everything that's coming in there, remember, anything in your gastrointestinal system is still outside of your body. Just like urine in your bladder is not in your body, it's being held by the bladder. Um, and the feces in your colon is not in the body, it's being contained in the colon. Well, same with the whole GI tract. Even the stuff that you just chewed and swallowed is not in your system; it's in your stomach, and then it goes through the small. So that whole tube there is not in the body; it's in this tube, right? And so, I was anyway. Um, when the vein, so the job of the liver is to take anything in that tube and bring it through the liver. The liver will detoxify it. Right? That's the job of the liver, is to detox. One of the main jobs is to detoxify that. It does a lot of many other things, but so it goes through there. But now the external two-thirds of the rectum drain into what's one of the main veins called the vena cava, which doesn't go through the liver. So when cannabis goes through the liver, whether eaten, um, or in the upper one third, it gets process known as hydroxylate. It gets hydroxylated and becomes psychoactive and makes you high, or I don't call it a high. When you if you take it, if you eat it like the edibles, it's not the same thing as when you smoke it. It's like um, it's a very physical thing more than psychological thing. But anyway, if someone swallowed 500 milligrams of this T4 to T1, THC to CBD being 4 to 1, um, they would be unable to move. So what we have are rectal suppositories that go in. You don't want them to go too far up, and then you won't have any psychoactive effects. And so what we do with people that come in and they have excruciating pain or they're on narcotics, we want to get them off so that they can function again. We use this, and usually it's twice a day, but that might not be. I've had people that it wasn't enough, so they had to do maybe 1.5 twice a day, or 3 times a day, or any combination that's necessary, so that the pain's gone. Because that's a much better way. Then you can get off of the other things. Now, the other choice here with this, Charles. Um, Now they found the metastasis on your liver. Just be aware that I don't know the actual statistics, but from my experience, I'd say at least 90% of when people find out that they have pancreatic CFCs, it's already spread. Now, especially if it's in the tail or the body, just because you don't know about it until it's grown and starts causing pain. The one on the head, sometimes you'll start to get jaundice before you have anything else. In fact, one of the, when you learn it in medical school, is if someone has painless jaundice, it means no pain, but they're yellow. The first thing that comes into your mind is pancreatic CFCs. So, metastasis, and because of the location, remember we said before, the only difference between breast CFCs, colon CFCs, brain CFCs, and all that is the first word, location. So because of the location of the pancreas, it's easy for it to metastasize, right? Okay, so whereas the breast can grow this big and not go anywhere else. Um, so it doesn't metastasize as quickly. So and if it's just met on your liver, that's pretty standard, and it's not changing anything. But the problem really right now is you've got excruciating pain. Now they're giving you 6 rounds of chemo in the hopes that they're going to shrink it down, and and hopefully that'll eliminate the pain. But and I understand if that's the only thing you have going on. The other one is they like to do surgeries, and they do a surgery called the Whipple procedure, Whipple procedure. But that's usually if it's like in the head, not if it's in the body and the tail. If it's in the head, then what they do basically is they take because if the pancreas, if it's growing up into the intestines and all that, and usually the whole duodenum gets really useless, and it's going up through the bile ducts into the liver, and so they just cut that all out, the head and all that, and they take the stomach and they connect it to the portion below the pancreas, below the duodenum, called the jejunum. It's called a Whipple procedure. And I would like, if anyone has to have a Whipple procedure. By the way, there was even, remember when people that had were like they have what's known as morbid obesity. They used to make the stomach smaller, and they found out that people could make whatever is left of the stomach grow by eating a lot. So they started this thing. They had a new procedure called a Roux-en-Y, and a Roux-en-Y is basically a Whipple for someone who doesn't have a tumor. And the problem is, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying I have diarrhea. Well, of course you have diarrhea, because if you're eating regular food. All right, well, very good. Well, listen, Terry just sent the message. This whole thing is being recorded wherever you're on Facebook or whatever. I'm not sure what you're on, but it's being recorded on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, so you can see it tomorrow, the whole thing. Anyway, um, but anyway, can you imagine that? So, but remember, if that happens to you, if you do have a surgery like that, you can't eat. You can't. You've got to. What you've got to do is you've got to make sure that the food you're eating has been suitably processed, like the duodenum would have done, because you're going to lose that ability. And what's in the duodenum? That's where the bile comes in. And what's the bile for? For fat, right? It breaks down the fat into small little. It helps break it down because it's got to be ultimately turned out into these little bubbles called micelles so that they can be absorbed. So that's from the bile salts. So you're missing that, and you're also missing all the pancreatic enzymes. So the food. So if you're going straight into the jejunum, so remember not remember, but keep in mind that the small intestines is duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, and then it goes into the colon. Well, the jejunum and ileum are just for absorption. They don't really digest. Maybe a little bit in the jejunum, but that's not it. So if you put something in there that hasn't at all been processed, it's going to remain big and solid, cannot be absorbed. We can only absorb like a single amino acid, uh, uh, a single molecule of carbohydrates. And so what will happen if you have all that stuff in your big solid chunks of food? Even I'm not saying big, but I mean anything you can is big for in terms of absorption capability. Pulls water, and you get what's called an osmotic diarrhea, and you wind up getting diarrhea, and you don't get the nutrients. So what you'd have to do with a situation like that is what I have people do here is we do blended soups, and of course we don't destroy them with fire. I don't like to destroy anything with fire, so um, so blended soups, but then you need to add enzymes and bile salts. Now, bile salts might not taste too good, so it might make the food not taste good. So I would just put the enzymes in, and then you can take the bile salts separately, eat it, and then take the bile salts. But then you've done the best you can to make sure that the food will be processed enough in the jejunum. And the ileum is very, very long, so there's a lot of time for that. But that'll really improve your. Hi there, Terry. Cool. That will really improve your ability to be nourished. So if you don't do that, you can't be nourished. So you've got to find out. So that's why it's really important to bring to the doctor the surgical report so they can see what was connected to where. But I noticed that most doctors don't even think about this, except for the bile. Oh, and then they give pancreatic enzyme. Yeah, I guess they do. Anyway, so my guess, Charles, is that it's probably in the body or the tail, not the head. Now, they sometimes will go in and remove the tail, if that's the problem. Or they can take out, partial, like part of the body and the tail, and then they usually take out the spleen because the tail goes to the spleen, but I'm not sure if they have to. And they also take out a bunch of lymph nodes and stuff like that. But I think the best thing, Charles, is to try to control the pain while you shrink this down, so you don't have to get any surgery. Because remember, surgery it's irreversible. So if you have to, you have to. But I would really get the cannabis. You got to get like I said, a 4-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD, 500 milligrams in a suppository, which there's way, you get the oil, and make sure, by the way, anybody's using cannabis for any medical reason or whatever reason, just remember that, especially in a state where there's recreational, if it's recreational, that means everyone is, or even if it's just medical, all the growers are in competition. So in order to get as much as it can grown, they were because it was unregulated, they were using as much pesticides as they could, and they were so full of pesticides. So make sure you're getting organic stuff. But anyway, you can take the resin, they make from it, and you could freeze it, and you can, and there I think you can get suppository kits off online where it's the shape of a suppository, which has got to be like almost the shape of a bullet, narrow at the front, and they fill it up. You fill it up with that, and then you can put it in the refrigerator, in the freezer, right? And then you can put it in. So you're lying down, you put it in, and don't put it up too far, and just lie there for like 20, 30 minutes. So what's good is take one at night when you're going to go to sleep. That's really easy, and then one in the morning, and you have to lie down for a while. Otherwise, it's going to leak out. All right. So and then also what would I do with the you're not sure what to do. Keep in mind that that which makes the pancreas work is called eating, right? And you know, if you sprain an ankle, you're gonna elevate it and rest it to allow it to heal. In fact, anything that is damaged needs to be left alone so it can heal. Look at all animals when they're ill of any kind. They go lie down. And they don't eat. They drink water. They lick some water. That's about it. They don't eat because remember they're connected to the wisdom of God through instinct. And remember, we're kicked out of the paradise of instinct by our parents and the world at large, society at large. Because we're told, don't be instinctual. My God, don't be instinctual. You've got to be a good American or a good German or a good Chinese, whatever it is. But all of the cultures are definitely opposed to people being instinctual. Animals are. That's all they do. And that's why we don't know what to eat, because we grow up eating stuff. And that's a whole other story. That's the first 6 years of life is when it all happens. And I will talk about that one time. It's called it has to do with pleasure and pain. And anyway, all creatures avoid pain and seek pleasure, but those are mediated by certain neurotransmitters in the brain, such as dopamine and stuff like that, and develop neural pathways, etc. And if you do that early in life, and eating fried spiders, or eating bull testicles, or eating monkey brain, or eating whatever it is, pasta, doesn't matter. That gets locked into that neural network, and that's it. That becomes pleasure for you. Anyway, so there are a lot of things that I would do. One is the less you eat. In fact, the only time I've seen in the hospitals, the only time that doctors put people on a really big fast is when they have pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is just inflammation of the pancreas, which means because if it's inflamed, it's spilling enzymes into the abdominal cavity, and that's a problem because those enzymes are meant to digest, and they do. They start digesting you, and that's painful. So they get the only way they can stop it is not, or slow it down, and the treatment for that, if you go in the hospital, is they put you on nothing by mouth, including water. They give you ice chips to chew on, and you just lie in bed until it heals. Really, that's how everything should be treated, but except for traumatic situations. And I'm not everything. I know if you got a tumor in the brain, and yeah, but I'm just saying, other than these situations where that are trauma, or we're about to impact the vital function, it actually works. Water only, or just ice chips. So now the pancreas gets a chance to heal, but that's not going to be all. But I think one of the reasons that we have had such good success with pancreatic CFCs is because of that. We do fasting and cleansing and all that. Clean out the colon. You got to just decrease the work so it can heal. But then you need things that are going to actually shrink it, right? And in your situation is one of the situations where I would definitely use insulin potentiated low dose chemo. Now, low dose chemo is also known. A lot of research on it. It's called metronomic chemo. Especially in a lot of pain. If you weren't in a lot of pain, I could say we could use all the other things because they definitely shrink tumors. B17, vitamin C, but the thing is using it properly, using it appropriately, and all that. You've got to know what that is. You've got to be with a practitioner that understands how to do that. And then while you're trying to eliminate that, you're also at the same time, your therapies are in support of the rest of your body being um, um, cleansed and restored to health. Because if we could restore health to the body and then get rid of these things, it's great. But if we have a military um, plan, just going to bomb it with chemo and radiation, stuff like that, then and we're not supporting the health of the body, then we wind up having all kinds of problems with the body, right? And so that battle is fought on your body, and the problem is that you lose something called well-being. It's not worth it. But anyway, there's ways of shrinking it down and all that, but you got to number one take care of that pain. Otherwise, yeah, the pain, and whatever that takes, Charles. Sometimes it's surgery, sometimes it's hopefully we can avoid it, um, and all that. So I hope you got what I was saying. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, now what do you think of this is by Kathy. What do you think of MMS to treat pancreatic CFCs or any CFCs? Yeah, I think it's a great adjunct. But again, remember, just in that question, the implication is we're going to get rid of it. And remember, it exists as an adaptive response to something else. So if we don't eliminate the thing that's causing it to engage in that adaptive response, then it will never get rid of it. It'll keep being there. You understand? If I don't pull the plug on the cause, then it'll keep coming back, or it never goes away. It just has a fountain of source. Okay, so yes, MMS helps to shrink and stuff like that, but that can't be all, and you got to use other things. So I think really the important thing to understand with everyone is that with every kind of CFC, whatever it is that it's not one. There's no one thing that will do it, right? Nothing. I mean, not even certain. Not even you go in and you think that it is the problem, right? So you go to a surgeon and they take all of it out. Well, it will become thems and they'll be back because you didn't eliminate the source. So what you want to do is, do cleansing. You've got to go to, I think the first step is go to a biological dentist. You've got to go to a biological dentist. 80% of systemic conditions in the body are related to the oral cavity. And if you, for example, if you had a root canal on the same meridian where you're having CFCs and you don't take care of that first, anything else you do will be useless. You must understand the significance of biological dentistry. And by the way, again, I may say this every time because it continually blows my mind. The mouth is part of the body, and I don't know how it got separated, and we have two different professions. It's ridiculous. And so with that in mind, you can't really have a good healing center without a biological dentistry. It'd be like, we're going to work on everything but your heart, or everything but your liver or something. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the mouth is the beginning, the first part of the gastrointestinal tract. So from lips ending at the anus, that is the gastrointestinal tract. Yeah. Now the mouth is a really special place because not only does it process the food that keeps us nourished, but it also is the home of our tongue and our words. It's a very special place. And you remember, it's not what goes in the man's mouth that defiles him, but what comes out of the mouth. And what that is referring to is, because what comes out of the mouth is usually what's in the mind. This really goes back to the mind. Yeah. But that being said, what goes in the mouth can and does defile the body, not the soul. All right. So, for example, you can't eat saran wrap and turn it into flesh and blood or an energy. You can't eat tinfoil. and you can't eat with all these chemicals that are in food. They're not assimilable. They cannot be incorporated into any part of our being, so they must be eliminated. And if we were to define food as that which, when ingested, becomes either flesh, blood, or, and I'm being using the old term, flesh and blood, or energy. So that which ingested becomes flesh, blood, or energy, or energy, is food. That which, when ingested, needs to be eliminated because it can't be. We could call it poison. So there are different degrees of poison, right? There's like cigarettes are definitely a poison, but they take what, 5 decades to really have a profound effect. Even though all along the way the person doesn't realize, but they're losing their, uh, like if you're a basketball player, you couldn't do it. I guess there's some, but you won't do it for very long. But anyway, versus cobra venom, versus what is it, the black mamba. You get bit by a black mamba, I think you have 5 minutes. So there's different degrees of poisons, and we eat a lot of it all day long. If we eat like regular people. So anyway, so my point is that don't look for a thing. So yes, MMS is helpful, but you've got to do all the other things. You've got to remove the cause, right? You got to detoxify. You've got to get rid of clean the mouth up. You're probably going to have to do chelation to get rid of the heavy metals that we've got. By the way, I don't do heavy metal testing. Why? Because I never found anyone who doesn't have a heavy metal problem. So why waste the money on that? Unless the person doesn't know that, and they say, well, why should I do that? How do you know I am? Okay, let's do a test. And then we do a provoked test. Why a provoked test? What does that mean? That means you take a substance like DMSA, or an IV of EDTA or DMPS, whatever. And then, let's go with the DMSA, and then when the person gets up in the morning and urinates first and then takes it, and then you collect the urine for a period of time, and you can see, because that pulls it out of the cells, because these heavy metals don't hang around in the blood. The minute they get in there, they find a home, and they go into your cells. So they're not going to be in the blood. By the time if you find a heavy metal in your blood, that means it's either current exposure or you're so toxic that it's, your cells are full. So it's, yeah. So you really have to do a provoked to know. But again, I don't like to do a test on someone, a diagnostic test, if it's not going to change what I'd be doing. And what I would do with anyone is give them chelation to get rid of that in one form or another. So you've got to do all that, and then you can use binders and things like that, and you've got to repair the gut. You got to repair the gut. So there are ways to repair the gut, restore the gut biome, because all that. Remember, the GI tract, up mouth to anus, is the center of the body, and just imagine a long 30-foot tube with arms, legs, and a head. That's what we are. And if you take care of that tube, you'll live long and prosper. And if you don't take care of the tube, you won't be around too long. And remember, if you got a tube, the best thing to do is make sure it's flowing, right? And so I wouldn't put stuff in the top end if nothing's coming out of the bottom end, because it's just right. So anyway, a lot of this is so common sense that it's incredible. I mean, it blows me away. That's because we don't realize human beings somehow think we're not part of nature. Okay, so that's that. Now here's a question. This is from Sue. For a pancreatic patient with ascites, as you may know, is when you get fluid in the peritoneal cavity and you get a big belly like that. It's because it's got several causes. But what would you recommend to get rid of the ascites and to keep it from coming back? What are some treatments available for stage 4 patients, students, who have done the conventional treatment with no improvement? Well, okay. First of all, ascites, the buildup of fluid in the abdomen is usually, there's a few causes, but probably the most common cause is that the portal vein, like we talked about, that's draining all the organs in the abdomen, goes through the liver. So if there are like tumors around there, or lymph nodes are swollen and active because of a tumor anywhere, not only pancreas, but anything that causes lots of lymph nodes to kind of narrow the ability of the portal vein to enter the liver, it backs up. And when it backs up, what extravasates through the wall is the non-cellular portion of the blood. What are the cells? The red cells and the white cells and the platelets. So that means the stuff that comes out is usually like a yellow color, same as urine. And that's called, plasma or serum, whatever. That's what fills up the belly. And so that's just what it'd be blocking it this way. The other ways is when you just have multiple little, it's called carcinomatosis, or you have multiple peritoneal implants and all that, and it's just the same kind of thing. So it's usually due to that. So the ultimate and obvious way to deal with ascites is to eliminate the cause. But in the meantime, what the problem with ascites is the bigger it is, you can't eat very much because your stomach's being compressed. And then when you do eat, because your whole gastrointestinal system is being suppressed, you don't digest well, you don't assimilate well. It's really not good. And if it's pressing up on your diaphragm, which is necessary for breathing, so because it's hard to breathe, and when you lie down, you can't lie down and stuff like that. Then when you're getting like that, you need to have it drained. But after you have it drained, you have to. The problem is, because it's going in there, what'll happen is it'll start to get filled up again from where? From your blood. And so your blood will lose its volume. And if it loses its volume, the volume of blood circulating around your body, then the body will be less able to deliver the nutrients and oxygen to the cells. And your blood pressure will go down. It'll be a really bad thing. So you've got to give IV fluids, at least what they call normal saline, which is just the same salinity. Well, actually, they don't do it that way, but it should be the same salinity as your blood, which it's not. So it needs to be what they call isotonic. It has the same pressure from salt that your blood does. And then you put that in, it'll stay in your blood vessel, because if you put it in with less salt than your blood has, water will leak out into the system. And if you put too much salt, it'll draw water into it. But anyway, the problem is that it's going to go into what they call the third space, which is your abdomen, ascites, or if it was lung, it would be pleura, whatever. So what you have to do is you have to put the fluid in. So after they drain it, you're going to give them IVs of a lot of fluid, but you're going to give them a diuretic so that makes them urinate more, like Lasix or Lasix. And I would do it IV. So when you're giving the IV, you give that. Why? Because you want the fluid to go through the body and through the kidneys and out, rather than going into the abdomen. So if you gave someone who just had their ascites drained, and you just gave some IV fluids without that, most of it would accumulate into the abdomen. So you give lots of fluids in there, plus the Lasix to urinate it out, and you keep it in the blood vessels. Okay, so. But ultimately, what you've got to do, Sue, is you've got to eliminate the cause of it. But in the meantime, you can do that for comfort. Now, once you've drained it and all that, you can take a combination of, depending on the kidney function of the person, Lasix, as I said before, which is also generically known as furosemide, which is what they call a loop diuretic, and its function, the amount that you need for this to work, is depending on your kidney function. So that's why we need to know what the creatinine is. And anyway, so I would say at least 40 milligrams or 80 milligrams. Depends. IV first, Okay, no, we already talked about that. So as to prevent, once you've drained it, help to prevent it, is you take maybe 40 or whatever it is, 80 milligrams of Lasix in the morning, and then you take another diuretic 4 times a day. That is what it prevents potassium from leaving. And why do you do that? Because Lasix will cause potassium to leave. And potassium leaving the body is very dangerous. Okay, so you got to keep the potassium where it needs to be. Um, so you take, it's called aldactone. So you take 25 milligrams 4 times a day, and the Lasix maybe 40, 80, whatever it is you need. And that way, because the Lasix will have a bigger effect on urinating, and then the other ones will keep you urinating, but it'll keep the potassium in. Because if you don't give potassium, you got to be given. I mean, if you don't give aldactone, um, then you've got to be checking the blood every day for potassium. You've got to give the person potassium. So I remember they used to, way back when, we'd give Lasix to people with potassium uh, pills to take at the same time. But anyway, aldactone is a better way. So for ascites, to prevent its recurrence or to slow down its recurrence, you keep that diuretic going. So Lasix and 4 times a day, aldactone 25 milligrams. That works out pretty well. But we got to get to the reason and eliminate that, which means everything else we always talk about, right? Which is, yeah. So let's look at the next one here. If unable to, this is from Patricia. It says, if unable to participate in your program, can you recommend the top priorities one should do if not inclined towards conventional treatments? Diagnosis is stage 3 non-small cell lung CFCs. Okay, so just to point out something there, you realize again a diagnosis is just a description of the microanatomy. So the pathologist got a piece of it and looked at it, and he saw that it was consisted of what are called small cells. And then the other way you would have it, if in the lung, it would be called non-small cell, and that's usually gland adeno. But this is a small cell lung CFCs. Well, I can move my back. That doesn't help you. These words that they use as diagnosis has no help at all. You might as well call it a potato because it's not telling you how you got this or how to get rid of it. And they make a big deal out of getting a diagnosis. And they're talking about a tissue diagnosis, which they're talking about a description of something that they see, which doesn't help them at all. However, it gives you the proper nomenclature to stick into that really very important sales algorithm that tells you about the services and products that you should sell. And if you think I'm being like, oh, it's a little over the top, Dr. Lodi. No, 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 not at all. You just got to understand what's going on here. Uh, but organic lemon and organic cucumber blended in water, good diuretic. Yeah, but I mean, not enough for. I mean, they're helpful, but not enough for something like ascites. For the average person, it helps keeping your kidneys flowing, urine flowing. But it's not going to help in a situation that's very extreme, like ascites or pleural effusion. So, but anyway, so if unable to participate, I get it. I get it. I would be unable to participate. It's just too much. Um, so what would you do? What you have to do, and Patricia, you can please go back and watch, lots of these lives, and I've got other videos out there and stuff, so you can understand that it's always, regardless of where it started and what stage it is. By the way, the staging system is ridiculous. It has no meaning, but except again, where they can stick you on that sales and products or the sales algorithm. Um, so so regardless of the stage, whatever, you've got to do this. Remember, you want to eliminate you've got, first of all, you've got to eliminate all the possible toxicity, because you got to understand what it is. It's not genetic, no, and it's not bad luck, no, because there is no such thing as luck. Um, Nothing in the universe occurs without a cause. Nothing is spontaneously doing something. It's got a cause, right? And everybody who's good at pool knows that, or good at billiards. Pretty clear. You want to get in that corner pocket, you've got to hit it right at the right spot. And if you don't, it won't go. That's kind of how the universe is. All right. Um, so you've got to remove the cause. That means detoxification. That means taking a look at the oral cavity, biological dentist immediately. And how do you know you got a good biological dentist? Well, first of all, they're certified by the I forget what I don't remember their initials. They mean they went through training. Then you look under services. If they put in root canals, they're not a biological dentist. If they try to save root canals, they're not a biological dentist. If they don't use ozone and PRF which is something that's part of your blood called platelet-rich fibrin, to seal up after the surgery, they're not a biological dentist. And if they don't use ozone to sterilize areas that they're cleaning out, they're not a biological dentist. You have to do all of that. And then there's even more. They've got to test your blood against all the different dental materials. That there's over 2,000, and make sure that you don't have some unique incompatibility with some substance. So they only put biocompatible things in your mouth. Anyway, that's what you look for when you're looking on the website. And so you get there, you get that taken care of. While you're doing that, you're going to clean out the interstitial fluid, which is the fluid in which your cells swim, and you do that by doing a juice cleanse, a juice feast. Juice has everything in it. Good vegetable juice has everything in it except fat and fiber, so it's highly nutritious. And you're going to drink and that's with all the pulp removed. Remember that, the fiber removed. Some people get confused and they think if they blend it, it's a juice. No, it's called a blended soup, because you got the fiber in there, so you're not going to be able to drink too much. You're going to get full, just like if you ate it. The only difference is it's pre-chewed for you. It was chewed by the machine, but it's still going to make you full, and you won't be able to get that much. On the other hand, the amount of nutrients in 2 liters of juice minus fiber is more than anyone could ever eat in a day. And so if you're drinking 3 to 4 liters a day, you're getting more nutrition in that day than the average person gets in probably 3 to 6 months. Okay. And any natural remedies for Lasix? You mean other than Lasix? I mean, if you have a severe problem, no, there's nothing. There's nothing natural that will make you urinate that much, because you're dealing with a situation that is very, very, um, extreme. Things are being blocked, so you've got to be really strong with it. Well, what's coming up is that we're going to have different groups for everybody to join in, where I'm only going to work with current questions that come up rather than looking at the ones that would have been sent in. But in deference to them, I have to, they sent it in. I have to do that, and I can answer occasionally. So, great, fantastic, sincere servant. Um, all right, so I should try to answer yours there. Essential thrombocytosis. But anyway, let me go back here. So as I said, you've got to be cleaning out everything. So you do juice cleanse maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks. Keep doing it. Remember, it's a lot of nutrition. You could do it 6 months, but eventually you need to get fat and fiber. So you can't do it. You got to get that. And clean out the colon. Do colonics. Find a lymphatic therapist. Get your lymphatics moving. Do movement all day long. All right. Whatever your job is, unless you're a gardener or a construction worker or somebody who's moving around all day. Every 1 hour, set your alarm, or an hour and a half maybe, and go outside for 10 minutes. Or if it's too cold, stay inside and do some movement. Do jumping jacks, push-ups, walking forward on your tiptoes, back and backward on your tiptoes, and anyway, just do a bunch of movement like that. Get yourself out of breath. Okay, you got to be doing that. You got to do meditation again. Remember with the prayer we talked about before, prayer and meditation, um, and um, and then you've got to use some, especially in a situation like this, you've got to use some things to actually get rid of what's there. And that is going to be high doses of intravenous vitamin C by someone who knows what they're doing. You could do B17 with someone who knows what they're doing. You can do, artesunate, which comes from wormwood, with someone who knows what they're doing. You get a lot of different IVs that will help do that. You could use, there's red light therapy. There's a lot of different things. Ozone. I mean, there's many, many, many things that you could be doing that are not toxic, and that the conventional world doesn't even. You can't ask their opinion on it because they don't know. And when they don't know, what do they say? They don't want to look foolish because they're a doctor, so they're going to say, because what they actually think that if it was important, they would have been taught in medical school. And since they don't know about it, they just say, well, there's no research to substantiate that. Oh, yeah. You just tell, if a doctor tells you that, you say, listen, what you need to do is play a little less golf and stop watching Netflix and read some research. Most people wouldn't say that, but I would. And I do if I run into them. If they tell me there's no research, I say, give me your email. I'll send it to you. And I will flood them with research. Everything that we do is research. It's truly science-based. And I'm going to tell you something. When I was a conventional doctor and I went for my continuing medical education points to get my license renewed every 2 years, it wasn't science-based. It was pharmaceutical-based. Every CME, I went for the continuing medical education point, was about a drug and what effect it had and what side effects it had. It had nothing to do with biology, nothing to do with physiology, except a little bit on how the drug works. So there really wasn't science-based. What we do in the integrative world is we actually work with the biology. Everything we do is based on biology, and we just either try to. We basically want to get rid of all the things that are preventing the body from healing, which that's how it was designed. I mean, anything you go cut off some flowers and they're going to grow back. You pull off an apple from the tree, you're going to have two in that spot next year. You pull up your weeds from the backyard, and by the time you turn around, they've grown back. That's the nature of nature. So, yeah. So anyway, so after you've done, you got to find someone to work with that's going to help you do all these things. And there are certain supplements you must take. You've done cleansing and fasting and all that. And then when you start eating again, you want to eat what? Food. What is food? That which can be incorporated into the body as flesh, blood, and energy. Okay? Where does that come from? The earth. The earth. Who gave the instructions? God. It's called earth food, real food. Now, once we get our hands on it and we do something to it, it is no longer natural. It has been augmented. And therefore, it's what we call artificial. The body has a hard time with artificial stuff because the body is not artificial. So you got to eat food, and food is that which grows. It comes from the earth. So if you want to eat an animal, then you've got to eat an animal the way that animals who eat animals eat animals. So what do lions do? They don't barbecue. I'm telling you, they don't. I've never seen one. I remember going on a tour through an area like that, and I never saw any of them barbecuing. So, and they don't even boil it. Just eat it while it's dying. While it's dying, they eat it. That's called a carnivore. So if anybody thinks they're a carnivore, then wow, that means you're what? Just biting into animals while they're alive? I've never seen that. I'm sure they exist. Isn't that what zombies are all about? And by the way, the CDC's website does have preparedness for the zombie apocalypse. And so do like a lot of a lot of government agencies have been told they have to put that on. I wonder why. What's happening? Oh, let's not think about it. Don't think about it. Don't. Let's just. I'm just busy with my work and busy with my. Nothing I can do anyway. Right. Isn't that everybody? I got to take a second for this interesting question here. Do you believe in the mental ability to manifest and control your body's cells and healing, whether that be through meditation, breathing exercise, etc.? Well, I would define that differently. I would say if you can successfully turn off your mind, then your body will. It's like then it becomes the mind. See, our mind obstructs health. See, health. The word the word health comes from the root word heal, and what that means is to be healthy is to have your body is continually healing. Why is it healing? Because it's taking 30. It's recycling, getting rid of, and producing 37 million new cells every second. And there's all kinds of things going on. So it's a continual healing. So health is the ability to continually heal. And the only thing that gets in the way with it is our mind. Again, that gets in the way of that process is our mind, right? And because our mind will tell us to eat stuff that we. Because imagine that you could not, if you're, for example, if you're smoking cigarettes and you wanted to somehow prevent its effect, you can't. And if you're eating non-food, you cannot prevent its effect. And you would only be eating non-food if your mind was telling you to do, if that's how your mind works, if that's what you grew up with. So I think we can affect it by not thinking, and our body will then do what it was designed to do, and that is to function optimally, which is the real definition of health. That's what would happen. So I don't think we can direct, because even if we thought we could direct our thinking, even if I could direct my conscious thought, which is not easy, but if you think you can do that, you still got 90% unconscious, subconscious, not unconscious, subconscious, and then 80% is negative. And but that's a very good question. Thank you. Um, so those are the top priorities. You understand, Patricia? Okay. Okay. Now here's another one that's where's that question again? Anyway, it's called what is the question here now? Can you explain? This is Sharon. Can you explain ferroptosis and how to induce it for killing persistent CFC cells? What do you use to take? Good question, Sharon. Ferroptosis is a kind of newly discovered way of cellular death. So the when cells die, one of the ways is called apoptosis, where the body is called programmed cellular death, and it's kind of recycled. There's another one that is when it is destroyed, and that's called necrosis. And the difference is, so for example, if you're taking some kind of medication, strong medication that's killing tumor cells really quickly through necrosis, it's spilling all the enzymes and stuff into your body, and you get what's called tumor lysis syndrome, tumor necrosis syndrome, and you get really sick from that. And but anyway, so ferroptosis is a newly discovered one. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, apologize. That was a little more than 1 second. Um, Koto- anyway, ferroptosis was just recently found, and the interesting is the word ferro is usually not usually, it refers to iron. So iron actually comes in two phases, two what they call valences. Now iron is a metal, so it has a plus sign. A plus sign, I don't know why they did this, but a plus sign means lacking. So if you have 1+, you're lacking 1 electron. If you have 2+, you're lacking 2. 3+, you're lacking. On the other side of the periodic table, they have a minus, which means you have an extra one. I don't know how they came up with that. But anyway, so iron comes in 3 or 2, so it's called ferric or ferrous. Okay, so obviously iron is involved in the way of ferroptosis, right, to eliminate. So the thing is, ferroptosis is actually a way that our body protects itself. However, there's a certain part of the program that gets damaged, and now they find that it's actually ferroptosis actually is part of the process of certain adaptive processes that they call diseases. That include like tumors, problems with the nervous system, ischemia, reperfusion injuries. Where so you have a heart attack and then it blocks off the blood flowing, and then once the blood starts flowing again, you get reperfusion injuries because there's a lot of free radicals and stuff. It can happen in the brain and all that. So, but there's that, kidney, blood problem, blood conditions. So it's involved in a lot, right? And so it's different than apoptosis. It's different than necrosis. And so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's there to help us, but it can get subverted. Okay. The other ways of eating up a cell or getting rid of a cell is autophagy, which you've heard of, right? And there's and in addition to necrosis, autophagy, where the cell eats itself, which is usually good. We that's what we do every night when we're sleeping. We're cleaning up the old and preparing for and allowing the new to come out, right? It's a way of it's a regenerative process. Okay, so then but there's even something called necrotic apoptosis and stuff. So there's different ways of cells, but this ferroptosis is a new one, right? So, and it's not just they made it up, but morphologically, in other words, the morphology means shape. So morphologically, what ferroptosis shows is a shrinkage of mitochondria with it loses the mitochondria, which make the energy, right, from glucose and oxygen, that makes energy. Is inside the mitochondria, a little thing called cristae, where all the work is taking place. So it's actually a different mode of cellular death, right? But again, as I said, it has an important regulatory function normally. But it's been involved. It's involved in heart problems, nervous systems, tumors, anything in the gastrointestinal tract. It's involved a lot. Now, so your question really was, how do we bring it back so that to do the job for us, because it can also destroy tumors as well as pave the way to make them. You can. So how do we do that? Well, okay. See, iron is a very damaging. It's a double-edged sword, and in fact, iron is one of the most heavily guarded and regulated substances in our body, right? So as soon as it comes in, it's quickly grabbed by a carrier molecule that carries it, right? Transfers it wherever it needs to go, and then it's handed off to a receptor, right? A transferrin receptors onto some cell, and it takes it in right away, right? If the blood gets somehow bursts and iron escapes into the blood immediately, there's another protein that carrier called haptoglobin. It grabs it, and so it's never alone. And then when there's excess, it gets stored by another kind of protein called ferritin. So you can't leave iron alone, right? And in fact, that's how a lot of our fundamental physiological processes occur. Okay, so ferric with the 3 plus is kind of the storage form, and ferrous with the 2 is kind of the activated form. And so a lot of the enzymes that we have, systems that we have, they're called dioxygenases or monooxygenase, but monooxygenase is copper. But the dioxygenase enzymes have to keep it in its 2 plus. And guess what helps it keep it in the 2 plus? That's right, ascorbate. And without it, it doesn't work. Anyway, but anyway, so now the thing that can induce ferroptosis, there's this stuff called elastin, right? And it can induce, in other words, cause ferroptosis to occur. And what it does basically is it results in the production of free radicals and all that. And then it also it inhibits the voltage-gated anion channels to the mitochondria. Now think about that. When we talk about thyroid, we're talking about delivering iodine to the mitochondria to depolarize the mitochondrial membrane and have the mitochondria make energy. So this stuff, elastin, would inhibit that. It wouldn't allow that, so you'd have decreased energy too. I mean, so anyway, that's why when they look at the consequence of ferroptosis, they're going to see, it really affects pretty much the mitochondria a lot. So what they've got, there's these things called ferrostatin and lipoxystatin. So the other thing that's notable about ferroptosis is the amount of peroxidized fats. Okay, so when you oxidize something, you've heard the word oxidation, antioxidant. When you oxidize, you take away electrons. Okay, and then you make it what's called a free radical. So that's. But when you oxidize a lipid, it's called peroxidation. It's just the way it is. But so it just stimulates peroxidation, and you get a lot of fats, free radical fats, and peroxide and destroyed fats. So if you're going to destroy fats, which is 50% of what membranes are made of, you're really going to destroy the cell. So anyway, this whole system gets set up. Now it'd be great if we could use it for us, right? But so what we've got to do is figure out a way to do that. One of them is the vitamin E, because vitamin E is when you take vitamin E or you eat foods with vitamin E, they're also, it's also known as tocopherols, right, and tocotrienols. But when you take that, they are fat soluble, lipid soluble, and they embed themselves into membranes. So whereas vitamin C would be an antioxidant in the blood, the vitamin E is an antioxidant in the membrane of the cell to protect the cell. You know what else is in the membrane of the cell to protect the cell? That's right, the big evil cholesterol. Oh my God. So we got to talk about the cholesterol one day. It's not bad. It's only the oxidized form of the LDL. It has nothing to do with the cholesterol. It has to do with the fact that you're oxidizing it because your lifestyle is causing that. Anyway, so those substances. So there's like 3 different substances so far that we found. So now there's really, you can use these substances. What do you call it? The ferrostatin, the lipoxystatin, and those are actually really good. But one thing I like is what's it called again? Valasta, Valasta. Look it up. It comes from algae, and it's probably the most powerful antioxidant around. And so in terms of its antioxidant capabilities, it's like, is it 600 or 6,000 times more than ascorbate vitamin C? But that can't replace it because vitamin C is used. It has purposes that it's not just It's not just an antioxidant, although that's all it does is donate electrons, which is what an antioxidant is. But it always, um, good, you take Velasta, excellent. It always is taking away an electron, but sometimes, I mean, adding an electron, but sometimes when it does it, like for example with iron, you have ferric, it turns it into ferrous, and then it gets activated. So in that case, you're activating, you're actually oxidizing. It has an oxidative effect instead of an antioxidant effect. Anyway, but this Velasta is very powerful, and there's a certain way to take it, and you need to look it up. And I think that would be a very good. I think vitamin E would be very good, and but I also vitamin A. And then the other thing is too, always remember, you've got to do the same thing always to stop it. Because if something has been, if a system in the body has become disrupted, then we've got to remove any more of its ability to get disrupted. So that's called detoxification. Clean it out, do the detox. Okay. So very, very important because if you don't, even if you, if you, let's say you got enough vitamin E or you got enough of these other in there, it would be working all the time because you're continuing to produce it. So you've got to take away. You can never not take it. You can never. I mean, you can never not detoxify. You can never not. You can never not clean your body, your colon, and all that sort of thing. And you've got to start eating healthy. So all the stuff we said, yes. And then again, you can eat foods that have lots of tocotrienols, and you can eat foods that have tocopherols, and then you can even take them as supplements. I like, if I can get something in a food, a natural source, so that's bioavailable, it gets in there and it works better. It's always better. It's always better. Because whenever you get a supplement, remember, supplements are, the word supplement means in addition to that which is inadequate. So as long as you're eating an adequate diet, you don't need as much supplementation. And so I only recommend a few supplements, but for specific reasons. So anyway, I won't go into that. Anyway, so it's, no one really knows how to directly affect that. But as I said, you got to stop it from happening for the same reason you're stopping the CFCs, all that. You've got to clean it out, clean out, turn this off, get them out, all the same old things. So anyway, I just noted that it's 7:08 here in, well, I don't know what time we are. It's not Pacific time, but I guess it's the same as, we just changed the clocks again. Now, keep in mind, what happened? It was, they changed the clocks. They didn't change time. Because there is no time, because it's always now. And you, please let me know if you ever find yourself in a situation which is not now. Let me know. Anyway, so Sawadi Kap, Kapumakap, and that means I'll see you next week, okay? And thank you for coming. And I'm sorry I didn't get all the questions, and I never will, but I'd love to, okay?